For those of you who don't know me, I worked on Kovacs Aim Trainer for 5 years, mainly as a games physics analyst and content creator. It was literally my job for years to learn as much about aiming as possible. And now I've been working in aiming for 9 years. I even made my own flashcard aim trainer and developed my own aiming mouse mod, which is the Clawmate. So it's safe to say I know a thing or two about aiming and what it can look like. To bring a fresh perspective, I have some new eye tracker clips that I think provide a unique insight into the thought processes behind target switching. From what I understand, people are having a hard time believing that snapping between players is possible, and especially to those who aren't on your screen. And on the surface, this makes sense. The most obvious aimbots tend to play this way, hence the connection. What baffles me a bit about Riley's vid is that it's from such a small sample size of clips, so the quality isn't going to be her best. And many of the flicks miss and require an adjustment. So what part of it is cheating? The part where her crosshair moves quickly, the little adjustment, or is it ESP and she can see enemies through walls? This rock clip in particular seems to have garnered the most attention. After killing the first enemy, she makes a big flick to the left and shoots a rock, and it turns out there was an enemy behind it. So in this case, did her aimbot whip her crosshair 90 degrees to the left and try to shoot this guy? If so, I can tell you right now, if she was running an aimbot that could flick to targets 90 or more degrees away from her crosshair, she would have a plethora of clips infinitely more damning than this one. Just imagine how hard it would be trying to hide the fact that you're playing with such a blatant aimbot while streaming. There would be no way to avoid tripping up. I could talk about these clips all day, but I want to provide a fresh perspective, so let's take a look at some eye tracker footage, and I'll tie back into the Riley clips as we go. Honestly, I'm playing at like 60, 70 FPS. The game feels horrible for me, unfortunately, but right now I'm behind cover, and using the eye tracker, we can see that I'm using the minimap to suss out where enemies are located. I can see that there's a bunch of people around that junction. I mean, I was just shooting at them, but interestingly, I see this guy here start to move down. Now I know that spot, so I pop up and go to fight him. And right now, a few interesting things have happened. One, there is a guy moving to the left here. Now, whether at the time I actually knew that was happening or not, I don't know, but if you play the clip, it does catch your eye. Anyway, I take the first kill, swap to this guy kill, and then I flick over here, right? And that looked kind of crazy. And just imagine if an enemy was there. Right? I flick over, there's a guy there, and I'll happen to land some shots or kill him. That's, instant accusation, right? That would look so sus. But the thing is, that made the most sense to do, right? That was the play that was most efficient in that moment, because there is one really important frame here. So right now on my screen, nothing else matters, right? There's no other threats, nothing else for me to shoot at. I have allies here, allies here. Earlier, I was shooting enemies over to my left in that junction, so it makes the most sense that the most likely place an enemy is right now is back at that junction. So what do? I flick straight over, and I haven't even stopped shooting. I'm still shooting, I'm using an LMG, I have that luxury, and if someone was there, I would be able to start fighting them with the lowest amount of latency possible, right? Like I'm not wasting any time, waiting on my reaction time or anything like that, so I've got the best chance of winning the fight. And even afterwards, you can start seeing that I'm seeking information elsewhere, trying to find some targets. I can't see anyone, so it's back to pruning, checking the map, reloading, and this particular play is over. And the reason I think this is such a handy clip is because I think it draws a lot of parallels to that Riley clip with the rock, right? Like you get the few kills and then you do this big flick. And it just so happens that no one was there this time, but especially for someone like Riley, right? Like that's the thing. They play to farm these target switching clips. I'm not playing in that way, so I don't have as many examples. I don't have as many situations where this could pan out, but you go for that big flick, eventually it's going to land. Someone will be there, and you get that awesome clip. And to tie back into Riley's rock clip, I think people are latching onto this idea that they were locked onto this enemy through the rock, when in reality, it was just a coincidence, and you can even see her crosshair moving right while the enemy moves left. And better yet, if they knew an enemy was behind that rock, either via ESP or some aimbot flicking there in the first place, why do they drop their ADS right as the enemy comes into view? That doesn't make any sense. They dropped their ADS because they couldn't see anyone and wanted to move forward. It also takes them about 20 frames at 60 frames per second, so around a third of a second to move their mouse toward the enemy after they first appeared on screen. That's a fairly slow reaction. In my opinion, their eyes, mind, thoughts were likely shifted to something else in this moment. It's certainly not the reaction speed you would expect from someone who either knows the enemy is there via ESP hacks or has a bot that instantly snaps to enemies. Right, so in this clip, I think this one is a bit more obvious, right? It's breakthrough, you have a good idea of where enemies are going to be. I can already see there's a million of them on the map under me. Too many allies there, so I go to pick a new angle. Take this guy down, flick around, and it ends up being too many enemies and I die. But I think this sort of just shows that same train of thought, just on like a simpler level. It's like, take down this guy, then nothing else in my current field of view really matters. I can't see any other enemies, and I know there are enemies to my left. So you just take the big flick, I haven't stopped shooting, and I get as many kills as I can before I die because there's just too many people. I think this clip is quite interesting too because it shows the information gathering side of target switching pretty well. And also how you kind of just like walking on like a knife's edge with some of these plays, right? So right now, I was looking for an enemy, couldn't find anyone, so I looked down to the minimap, and of course, that's exactly when someone peeks me. But fortunately, our crosshair's in a good position, and we still get the kill. Then we get into cover, and we just checked the map, and we can see there's a guy there. So that's where we end up putting our crosshair, and they do jump out. We get a nice little target switch. And then we flick over here, right? We shoot, get nothing, shoot a teammate, and here we are, we're feathering some shots on this corner. And eventually we find the guy and kill him. Now, a lot happened there, so let me go back and play that through a bit slower because something really cool does happen. So right now we've just killed the two. Now I've planted my crosshair here because that is where they have to climb up, right? So if someone does happen to come up, I can just shoot, right? They will be in my crosshair. So I can freely look at the minimap, and what I see is there's someone below me to my right. Now I know there's a path there. So the next most logical thing to do is to flick there and start shooting, right? I'm using an LMG, I've got a lot of bullets. So that's what I do. I flick, shoot. And honestly, that was super on point. That was right on the corner. That was a sick shot, but they went there. They're a bit further to the left, not exactly where I thought they were. And off to the right, we have a teammate. Now I do actually look at them, then look back. And I think it was the fact that they raised their weapon. I was suddenly like, oh wait, was that actually an enemy? So I look back, flick, miss, adjust, shoot, no, it's a teammate, whatever. I can go back to thinking about this guy. And because I have a lot of ammo, I'm constantly checking back at this map and I'm feathering shots at the corner because I don't know if he's like about to push or not. So I keep going. I see that he's really close. So right now I end up shooting this box because that was the straightest line between us. And now I think I've sort of gotten the idea that he's around here. And I'm sure if you had some ESP outline of the enemy, it would probably look like I was trying to shoot them through the box, when in reality, I was simply being as efficient as possible. And that often means shooting first and asking questions later. You don't always have the luxury to wait for your reaction time to tell you what's going on. And look at this. My eyes flick down to the right and I'm checking my ammo, right? And I'm at 26 shots. I'm using LMG, but I was fighting those two guys up there. I was shooting this area here. I shot my teammate. So I had to make sure that I had enough bullets to make this peak. So I come around, see him, finally get the kill, and that's the end of this particular play. But once again, you have one of these moments where if an enemy happened to be there, imagine someone was there. And this is pretty well placed. I think that'd be fairly close to head height. Imagine if someone was there and I got that kill. That would have been extremely sus. And unfortunately for me, no one was there. But if they were, right, that's how you get those clips where everyone thinks you're cheating. I think this entire situation can be summed up by a divide between those who are informed about aiming and those who aren't. Both parties engage with the same topic simply by playing FPS games. They're sharing the same space, the same mechanics, but their experiences are completely different. You have players who have spent thousands of hours in simulated aim training environments, who have all the best mice, mouse pads, computers, etc., who live and breathe being good at aiming. And not only that, for some of them, like Riley, their thing is to farm flashy clips to put into highlight reels. Of course they're going to have impressive aim, otherwise what would be the whole point of going to all that effort? And all of this isn't to say there are no cheaters in Battlefield, there absolutely are, and I'm sure everyone's seen that initial report about banning 330,000 players, and that number would be much higher now. There was even a recent aimer called Shimmy who was exposed for cheating, and they happened to play Battlefield 5 in some of their highlights. It can and does happen. But in Riley's case, the clips everyone's talking about are 100% legitimate in my opinion. Be sure to check out the Clawmate mouse mods I designed over at StruthGamingGear.com. Subscribe for more content like this, and I'll catch you in the next one.